Hey guys, if you watched my last video, thank you so much. I'm finally gonna do part 2. I had a lot of technical difficulties. I kept running out of storage on my phone. Thankfully, my husband bought more storage for me. My next problem is that I live in Florida and it was very hot, so I had my fans on the night I was recording, thinking I could just edit out the sound in the background, but it was not working. So tonight I have all my fans off. If I sweat, I sweat. So hopefully we'll have better sound quality this time. I'm re-recording this whole testimony, even though it was very long. There's probably some things I'll forget because I don't have my notes, and that's okay. I'm just going to roll with it. The first thing I need to say is I should probably put a trigger warning on here for multiple forms of violence, addiction, and death. This story is mainly about my daughter, and I asked for her permission to talk about these things. Everything I'm about to say in this video, I actually have tangible proof of. I have recordings, police reports, screenshots, all the above. I'm not going to be mentioning the names of the people that are in this experience, and I'm also not going to show any of these screenshots or recordings or police reports out of respect to the other people involved. I had originally started editing in this stuff in the last video I made, and I feel convicted about it. I don't feel it's necessary to show those things or for anyone to hear those things, so I'm just going to tell my story. If nobody believes it due to me not adding in those evidences, then that's fine. It's fine. If you watched my last video, I left off at me coming back to Christ and my relationship kind of being in a big mess because of that. At this point, things were changing and I was completely unaware of what was going to be happening. I think I mentioned it in my last video that my oldest daughter went to go live with her dad. So, backstory. To try to make this a shorter story, I'll try to run through this. I got pregnant with my daughter when I was 17, and I had her when I was 18. Me and her dad broke up at the very beginning of my pregnancy when we had gotten into an argument, and the way he was acting scared me. I could see that it was very toxic. After I broke up with him, I was constantly getting harassed. There was a lot of threats. He would always tell me that he wanted me to die. He was saying that he didn't want the baby to be inside of me anymore. I would constantly get what felt like a million text messages and phone calls and voicemails from him, threatening me, saying he's gonna take the baby from me. At that point in my life, I was young and dumb. I didn't realize I should have gotten a restraining order because he would just randomly pop up at my house. I was scared to go on walks with my dog. I was scared to leave my house. I kept changing my phone number, but I don't know who kept giving him my number, so I just cut off all of my friends. So not only was I 17 and pregnant, I was scared to leave my house. I was scared to go on a walk with my dog. I cut off all my friends. I was just alone. During that time, my mom was working all the time. She was a single mom, and she was going through her own troubles. She had just found out that her husband of like 10 years was cheating on her. So she was going through a lot too. I didn't know how to escape all of this harassment due to my own ignorance. Me and my mom moved to a different city. So I'm willing to admit my wrongs in this situation. When my daughter was born, I lied and I said that I had a stillbirth. And I genuinely apologize to mothers who have gone through that. So, fast forward about 5 years, I started to feel very bad about my decision. I already felt bad about it, but it was bothering me a lot all the time. I thought, maybe I made a horrible decision. What if he's changed? So we got back in contact, and he immediately wanted to establish paternity in court. Me wanting to show that I do want them to have a relationship, that I am cooperative, and I'm not trying to cause any problems, I agreed to everything he asked for. The paternity, every other weekend, every other holiday, all summer, him claiming her own taxes every other year, and him not paying child support. I agreed to all of it. There was nothing contested whatsoever. So everything seemed fine at the very beginning, but after that was established, it was right back to the constant harassment and threats. And then CPS reports, false CPS reports. Thankfully, every false report that he did against me, the cases were not opened. So I'm going to fast forward again to when my daughter was the age of 9, early 2019. I had just had my son in November 2018 with my husband, who was then my boyfriend. I had worked through that whole pregnancy, but then after I had my son, I could not return back to work. He would not take a bottle whatsoever. When I tried to go back to work, my husband would come to pick me up, him and the baby both crying because the baby would not eat. He would only breastfeed, so I had to stay home. We were really looking forward to taxes to catch us up on bills because my boyfriend at the time was the only one paying for all the bills. So in my court order between me and my oldest daughter's dad, I was supposed to claim her on even numbered years. He was supposed to claim her on odd numbered years. And in early 2019 tax time, this was taxes for 2018, I was supposed to claim her, but he claimed her against our court order. Not only did he claim her behind my back, my other daughter's dad claimed them behind my back. So I had no taxes to fall back on. I couldn't claim my son because he was just born 2 months prior. So we had no money to fall back on for our bills. We're worried about how we're even going to pay the bills to keep living in our home. And we're probably going to get evicted pretty soon. My boyfriend's mom offers for us to come live with her in Florida. At this time, I have a court order. I can't leave Missouri with my daughter. During this time period, my daughter has become super rebellious. Her dad is always trying to convince her to come live with him. And she's starting to feel like she wants to. So between not having the money to pay for our bills and keep living in our home, and my daughter just practically begging to go live with her dad every day, I thought, I'll let her go be with her dad, and maybe someday she'll see that she needs to be with me and come back. He promised to let her come visit us in the summers. That didn't happen. After I decided to go ahead and move to Florida, which I honestly was so scared to do. So scared to do it. I pretty much lost all contact with her. He wouldn't let her talk to me on the phone anymore. We were not allowed to video call each other. Every time she talked to me on the phone, it had to be on speakerphone so they could hear everything we were talking about. If I talked about anything they didn't want her to talk to me about, they would take the phone and hang up, and I wouldn't hear from her for days. If her little sisters mentioned visiting or her coming to visit us, they would take the phone and hang up on her little sisters, and we wouldn't talk to them for days. So I had to tell my daughters, don't talk about visiting. I wouldn't get to talk to her for weeks at a time, probably longer. I was accused of abandoning her and just leaving for the fun of it. And they made her believe that too. So back to the end of 2020, when I gave my life back to Christ. In September, when God really started pulling me back to Him, and I started questioning if I needed to follow Jesus again, that's when weird things started happening. I was suddenly getting video calls from her dad, and I thought that it was going to be her, so I was excited, but I would answer and it would be him, and he would just be flirting with me. I thought I would get to talk to her, but that never happened. It would just be me talking to him. And then he'd start calling me at nighttime, and he would be very drunk. And he would be going on and on about how much he loved me and how I broke his heart, and telling me that I owe him things that I'm not going to mention in this video, or probably ever. He kept asking me if I loved him back. Mind you, this is more than 10 years after my daughter was born. My dog is dreaming over here. So it started to make more sense to me why he acted out towards me the way he did, why he acted like he hated me and was constantly threatening me. And then on October 8th, he called me late at night, and he was once again drunk and telling me that his mom was keeping our daughter from him and that he needed my help getting her back. He wouldn't tell me why his mom was keeping her from him, but he was just saying that I needed to help him get her back. Due to and me working less, I didn't even have money to visit my daughter. It was just constantly playing catch up on bills. When he was telling me these things, we were just trying to figure out a way for me to gather $1,000 for a plane ticket that night, but I didn't have $1,000. So the next day comes and I ask him how everything is going, and suddenly him and his mom are getting along again, and he's back to cursing me out and calling me out of my name as usual and telling me I'll never see my daughter again, even though he was just asking for my help the night before. And then we're right back in the cycle of me not being able to talk to her or know where she is or what's going on. One day in November, I'm so sad about life. I don't see my daughter anymore. I can barely talk to her. She probably thinks that I don't care about her. Who knows what people are saying about me to her. When I do get to talk to her, they're rushing her off the phone. They're listening to the conversation. We can't have any real conversations about any real feelings. And then on top of that, my relationship is completely shattered because I've gone back to following God, and my boyfriend is still in the new age. He tells me that he believes there's multiple paths to God. He's never gonna give up all his spiritual stuff. He's never gonna stop smoking weed. He's never gonna stop using mushrooms and LSD. So that evening, I'm just praying to God and I'm just crying while he's high and painting. I decided to open up my Bible and just read. and I opened up to the story of Jehoshaphat, when Jehoshaphat went to war, and God told him that the battle is the Lord's. And in this story, Jehoshaphat and his army went up at the top of a hill and looked down and saw the enemies taking themselves out. And when they come down, they collect all the goods off of the dead bodies, literally for 3 days, and there's so much they can't even take all of it with them. And I was just like, wow, that's amazing. The battle is the Lord's. I'm like, okay, the battle is the Lord's. And I'm just thinking this pertains to my relationship at this point, because I'm really sad about my relationship. But that night I had a dream that I didn't realize was God telling me what was going to happen in the future. In this dream, I walked out of my house, and I know it was my house because when I look to the right, I see the same palm trees in my neighbor's yard, and this black car pulls up, and it's my daughter's dad in the driver's seat. And he gets out of the car and he doesn't say a word, and my boyfriend comes over and shoves him, and he falls down and gets back up and doesn't say anything, which is not like him at all, because he always wanted to argue and fight and bicker, and that's literally my whole experience with him, was fighting is all he ever wanted to do. I told my boyfriend, hey, stop, leave him alone, and he backs off. And then he opens the back door to the car, and my daughter is there, and she looks up at me and she's confused, and he like waves for her to come out. So she gets out of this back car, and we're both just astonished, like, oh my gosh, he's letting you be with me. And then he opens the trunk and he hands me a black trash bag full of all of her clothes. And then he closes the trunk and he sets his phone on top of it, and he drives away, and his phone falls onto the ground. And I picked up the phone and I said, how am I going to contact him if he left his phone here? I can't even tell him he left his phone here. And I was like, okay, well, he's gone now. So I said, let me show you the house. And I brought her in and I showed her around the house and I said, sorry, it's kind of a mess in here. What's new? And I walk her through the house and we go through this door, and I said, oh, and this is your grandma's room. Mind you, my mom did not live with me at this time, nor did I think she was going to come live with me at this time. I had no idea. But in my dream, I said, this is your grandma's room. And I said, oh, what's this door? And I opened it and I was like, oh, this can be your room. At this time, this dream was so incredibly far-fetched and unbelievable. It was just like, wow, that was such a nice dream. Oh, I wish that could happen. That was amazing. Back to not seeing my daughter when I wake up. Not talking to her, not hearing from her, not knowing how she is or what's going on. And what was amazing was the next day after I had that dream, things just keep clicking. My mom decided to just send us $600, and we paid all these bills that were piling up on us. And then me and my son went on a little walk to the store, and I was just gonna get him some cookies and some juice, and the man behind us paid for it. And then he gave me $20 and said, God bless you. And I was just like, wow, whoa, you know? And what's funny is, like, at the time that felt like such a big, wow, God is so amazing moment. But I didn't even realize that dream that night before and what was about to happen next was 1,000 times bigger. So that was November. Come December, my mom, who has always been a CNA like most of my life, was working, and she tripped over a cord and broke her foot. She asked me to come to Missouri to take care of her after her surgery. And she said she would pay for the plane ticket. I was only supposed to be there for 2 weeks, and I thought, oh my gosh, I can visit my daughter. I'm so excited. The stressful part was I was still breastfeeding my son, and we thought I'd just be gone for 2 weeks. I'll just take a pump, no big deal. But I was so wrong. So I took a plane back to Missouri. While I'm there, I asked to visit my daughter. Her dad agreed to letting me see her. At this time, my 2 middle daughters were in Kansas visiting their dad, so I was able to pick them up and take them with me to go see their sister, who they had not been allowed to see or talk to. The first red flag was my daughters, all 3, just crying that they wanted to stay together. They didn't want to depart from each other, so he allowed us to stay the night. And we felt like that was such a big win. It really was. But he absolutely would not let her be alone with me at any time, ever. Even that night when we slept in her room with her, he slept in there too, because he didn't want us to have any private conversations. But there was a point where my daughter was laying on my lap with her head, and she covered her face, and I could feel her crying, her body shaking while she was crying. And I felt her face, and there was tears. And I asked her if she was crying, and she said no. She was trying to hide that she was crying from her dad. And that should have been my first big red flag. But I thought it was just, oh, she misses me. So as the 2 weeks went on, he would ignore me. Some of the days I tried to contact him. He decided that I could visit her the night before my plane left back to Florida early in the morning. It was a Friday night, and I was so excited. I got in the car, and on the way there, I was praying to God, if there's anything I need to know, Lord, please let it be revealed while I'm here tonight. So I get there, and him and his boyfriend have been drinking. But nothing's really happening. He just keeps sending my daughter to her room so he can keep arguing with me about the past. That just happened for years and years, just arguing about the past, saying the same things to me over and over and over. I didn't mention when we were together when we were teenagers, he told me that he was bipolar. And he definitely had a lot of anger issues and trauma, lots of trauma. That's why I was very careful with him, even if he was very wicked, to me. I was just very careful because I knew he had a lot of trauma. I know how trauma can make people act. When I got there, I turned on the voice recorder on my phone and I just recorded the whole night. And by the end of the night, I was like, okay, yeah, they're drinking, but nothing's really happening. So I guess there's nothing that I'm gonna catch. But literally, as I was thinking that, when I went to the bathroom, I heard them starting to yell. I started a new recording and I went up to see what was going on. They are drunk and they are fighting. And I'm not talking about just yelling at each other, but physically fighting. My daughter's dad pushes his boyfriend down the stairs right in front of me. And I'm freaking out, screaming, please stop, oh my gosh, stop. And my daughter, ever so calmly, comes and pulls me to the kitchen. Is like, it's okay, Mom. It's okay, don't worry, it's okay. And at that point, I'm like, oh my gosh, she's used to this. This is normal to her. She's trying to calm me down. So I knew something was wrong. So I knew something was big time wrong. So then her dad calls the cops and tells them that his boyfriend pushed him down the stairs and he was threatening me and my daughter when that never happened. When the cops got there, he immediately told them to not listen to me because I'm going to lie about him to get my daughter back. I told them I have a recording. You can literally hear him screaming and cursing that he's gonna push him down the stairs again. And his boyfriend never threatened me whatsoever. He was always nice to me. The cops said that there's nothing they could do about it, and they took his boyfriend to jail. And at this point, he's cursing me out and telling me I'm never welcome there again because I didn't lie for him. He didn't know, but I canceled my flight back home and I stayed. And I immediately started looking for more police reports to see if this is something that was reoccurring since my daughter was used to it. I told him that I went back to Florida, so he wouldn't be suspecting that I was there digging up dirt or trying to take her or anything. I started trying to find lawyers who could help me. There are some lawyers you can get for free, but I couldn't do that in that area because he was already using the free lawyer and it'd be a conflict of interest with that firm. So I had to figure out what I was going to do to pay for a lawyer. My 2-year-old son is back home. I'm not even done breastfeeding him. He's screaming his eyes out every night with his dad. But I decided to stay, and I was going to try to do an emergency custody order. The clerks at the courthouse are talking to me like I'm stupid for even trying because I don't have a lawyer and I don't know what I'm doing and there's no way I'm gonna win. No matter what kind of evidence I try to tell them I have, they don't really care. A couple years prior to this, I had worked at a Walmart distribution center and I knew how to do the job just fine. And I saw that there was one literally 8 miles away in the town next to us. So I applied for it and I got the job. It pays really well. My boyfriend at the time was not happy about it because they wanted me to come home. But I knew this was not going to be an easy battle. So I got a job. Every time I called a lawyer, nobody wanted to work with me because I told them that I went to Florida. So since I went against the custody agreement, nobody would touch my case. They saw it as a waste of their time. I kept searching for police reports and I found over 50 police reports in 3 towns within 2 years that he lived in. 50 police reports, all showing how much they were getting drunk, how many times they were beating each other. The pictures, you guys. There's so much blood. There's hair ripped out. There's bite marks, scratch marks. There was instances where my daughter would have to sit at the police station and wait for her grandma to pick her up because her dad was in jail. In multiple police reports, you could see where his boyfriend said that he couldn't get away from her dad. So I tried to tell these lawyers that I have all these police reports. They still wouldn't touch my case. So then my mom tells me about a website called Legal Shield, and it's where you can get a discount lawyer. And I'm like, okay, well, we'll see, you know. And I found a lawyer finally. Not only was there a 25% discount, but he was willing to take my case. I gave him all my information, all of my evidence, and he was clearly could see what I was dealing with was an alcoholic and an abusive person, and he was ready to fight for me, and I was so stoked. but it was gonna cost $5,000 for him to be my lawyer. I am forever grateful to my older brother. He works really hard and he saves his money. And when I told him about everything that was going on and he heard my recordings from when her dad was drunk, saying some very vile things about her, he gave me $5,000 for my lawyer, and I can never thank him enough, and thank God for putting that on his heart to help me. So thanks to my brother, I was able to pay the lawyer to start my case. During this time of not being able to find a lawyer, I was still pretending to be in Florida, so he wouldn't know that I was starting up the court case again. I told him that I was coming back to Missouri to help my mom more because she was having a hard time healing. This was right before my daughter's birthday. I said, can I see my daughter for her birthday? The prior year, I wasn't allowed to talk to her on her birthday, and I didn't hear from her for 2 weeks after her birthday. I tried to contact his mom. She blocked me for asking her to ask her son if I could talk to my daughter. I later found in police reports that the reason why I wasn't able to talk to my daughter during this time period is because this is when she got stuck at the police station waiting for her grandma to pick her up as her dad was in jail. So when I asked him if I could see her on her birthday this year, he suddenly decides I need to get a test so I can see her. I never wanted to take one of those stupid tests, but I took one so I could see her. Of course, it came back negative, but he still didn't allow me to see her until 2 days after her birthday. My daughter now tells me that he was already drunk when he decided I could see her, and that's probably the only reason why I was allowed to see her, because he was drunk when he decided I could. And he said my mom could come. So me and my mom came. It was snowing like crazy. My mom is literally scooting around on this little scooter because her foot is broken in a cast. She had just had surgery. We get there and I'm recording everything the whole time again. And my mom is scooting up all these snowy steps on her butt because she can't walk. And we go in, and once again, the whole visit is about him. It's reliving the past, arguing, reliving the past, arguing, same old, same old. And he keeps sending our daughter to her room so he can keep doing this. And it got to the point where we were just tired of it. Like, me and my mom are trying so hard to just be respectful and just hope that we can spend some time with my daughter. But then it got to a point where I guess I wasn't holding my fake smile good enough anymore, and I must have rolled my eyes or gotten irritated, I don't know, but then he got mad. So then he's telling us that we can leave. He's threatening to throw my mom down the stairs. She's trying to scoot down his stairs on her butt to get out of the house so she can scoot down the snowy stairs outside to get to the car. At this point, he's screaming literally right in my face, calling me all kinds of names, telling me to get out of his house. And his boyfriend's trying to hold him back off of me. And then he pushes me down the stairs. My daughter's just begging him to stop. I'm asking him, is this what you want for her? Me and my mom go straight to the police station to file a police report, and we let the officer there listen to the recording. When we tell him the names and the address of the people, he knows exactly who we're talking about and tells us that they deal with them all the time. I requested the police report for this night so I could use it for court, but when I went to go pick them up, there was actually 2 police reports for that night. After we left that night, my daughter's father and his boyfriend got into a fight because his boyfriend was trying to defend me. He told the police that his boyfriend was threatening me, and that's why they got into a fight. When his boyfriend tried to get away from him, he slammed his finger in the door and it cut off the tip of his finger. So at this point, he knows that I'm staying in Missouri, and he is paranoid that I'm going to start up a court case. I now have my lawyer, and my lawyer is trying to serve him so we can start the court case. And he does not want me to know where he is working. He is avoiding getting served at his home. One day, me and my mom go to church. This is with a pastor that I had not seen since I was probably 10 years old. He knew who I was because when I was a child, my mom went to his church every Sunday. So we visit him in this church that's in the same town over where my daughter and her dad live. It's so crazy. It's so crazy. While I was at church, he was preaching, and he was walking around the room, and he looked at me straight in my face, and he pointed at me, and he said, "God says you win." He had no idea what was going on in my life at that time. No idea. And I was just like, in disbelief, you know, super skeptic, but hopeful. Skeptic, but hopeful. And that day when we left the church, my mom was thirsty. So I stopped at a gas station to get her a drink on the way out of town. And when I went in, I thought I saw my daughter's dad working there. And I came back out. I said, "Mom, I think her dad is in there. I think he works there." I'm like, I don't know if I'm just like kind of crazy right now. So I was like, I'm gonna go back in and buy something, you know? So I went back in, and it was the most awkward moment. When he saw me, he was like, "Oh crap, she knows where I work now. I'm gonna get served." And he had to check me out. He had to ring up my items and be fake nice for the camera. And I knew where he worked now, and he was getting served. What's funny is he tried to accuse me of stalking him. I never knew where he worked until this point, and he tried to accuse me of stalking him. We served each other at the same time. And he was trying to make me sound like a crazy stalker lady. He tried to make me sound abusive and like he was scared of me and that I was on drugs and I was drinking. And he has his lawyer completely convinced that I'm some kind of crazy, controlling, insane person. I'm a control freak. I'm the narcissist. All the above. This lady thinks I'm evil. She literally thinks I'm evil, and she probably still does to this day. Mind you, she's the same lawyer he had at the very beginning of our paternity case, and she knows I just agreed to everything with no fight. How come I wasn't crazy then? So the court process has begun. My lawyer made it to where he had to let me see my daughter. She's now coming to be with me every other weekend and every other school week. So I'm getting a lot of time with her. During this time, when she's with him, he still controls her contact with me, or lack thereof. When my daughter finally gets to come visit me and we go out, I realize how she is a totally different person now. My daughter, who once was a social butterfly, not scared of anything, just goofy, happy girl, is now anxious, scared, quiet, timid. If we went out in public, just going to a store, she would cling on to me and hold hands with me, and her body would be right on my body. If she was behind me, she would hold on to the back of my shirt. She hated going anywhere now. if I ever asked her anything, she was scared to tell me. And the reason why is because she really stinks at lying. Anytime my daughter lies, she smiles. And there's this scar on her arm. And I know what a burn scar looks like. It's definitely a burn mark. And I asked her, how'd you get that scar on the back of your arm? And she says, oh, I don't know. And I'm thinking, how do you not know how you got a burn scar? She just played it off like she didn't know. A long while after everything happened, she finally admitted to me that he burned her with a cigarette because she wouldn't smoke the cigarette with him. I would ask her, is there anything you want to tell me? Why do you not want to tell me anything? It's like I hated asking her, but I knew I needed to. And she told me, I can't tell you anything because every time I go home, he asks me what I tell you, and I can't lie to him. So it's just better for me to not say anything at all. So it was just always a questioning in my mind, like, what is it that she can't tell me? So as time goes on and this court case progresses, he needs more evidence that I'm some kind of crazy psycho lady. So then he decides to get an ex parte on me. And not only does he get an ex parte, but he fills one out for his boyfriend too. They're both in his handwriting. And they're getting an ex parte on me because I'm dangerous and I'm calling their landlord, trying to get them kicked out of their house, and I'm stalking them. And he fears for his life because I'm such a threat. Even though I never see him, besides picking up my daughter. When it came time for the actual court hearing for the ex partes, he didn't even show up, so they were dropped. There's so much that happened in this time frame. There's no way I could just put it all in this video. It would make the video so long, but I'm just giving you just highlights. So I came to Missouri in December, January, February, March, April, May. That's 5 months now that I've been in Missouri. The only time I've seen my family was for 9 days in April. I had to go back to Florida on a plane to take my daughters to a school testing. They were doing online school due to they had to do this one test in person. It had to be in person, so they had to go back. So I had to go home to finally see my fiance at the time. He proposed to me. And during this time that I was away from him, it was actually a blessing in disguise because us being apart gave him time to be alone, and he started to feel convicted for a lot of things, and he gave his life back to God. He just randomly one day sent me a photo of marijuana and mushrooms in the toilet. I remember seeing it and thinking, why is this guy sending me a picture of his poop in the toilet? But I opened it and it was marijuana and mushrooms. He flushed it. And just like me, he's never smoked again ever since. I didn't bother him about it. I didn't nag him about it. I just prayed for him. During that time, he was seeking God and he really wanted us to get married. So when I came in April, we decided to just go ahead and get married then. We don't know when we're gonna see each other again. It's been 4 months since we've seen each other. We miss each other. We want to be married. Let's just do it. Just me and him went to the courthouse by ourselves and got married. All right, I'm in here with no fan on and I'm sweating. So I have my little 9 days in April back home with my family in Florida, and I have to go back to Missouri because this court case is not even close to being over. We haven't even had a trial setting yet. If you don't know, a trial setting is when you go to the court and you decide what day will be the actual trial, and that could be months in the future. Going to family court is not a fast process in most cases. During this time, this whole process, I was dealing with so much spiritual warfare. There were so many demonic attacks trying to cause more distress on me. I was already trying to break curses and repenting for so many things and seeking God with my whole heart. I wasn't allowed to have earphones in at work, but I'd be there for 12-hour shifts, 6 days a week, and I would just be listening to praise and worship music the whole time because it was the only way I could survive. It doesn't help that I found out there were some really evil things that had happened in the house I was staying at the time. I never dealt with any spiritual attacks when I was in the New Age. I never really dealt with spiritual attacks at all in my life until I truly, truly repented and started living for Christ. Not only was I fighting for my daughter, I was fighting a very spiritual battle because my daughter was surrounded by darkness. Not only just her father's actions, but she started getting into very dark things, very dark entertainment. She was completely obsessed with creepypasta to the point where it was the only thing she would talk about all day, every day. Like, you literally couldn't talk about anything else with her. She was obsessed with Black Butler, Blue Exorcist. Those are two animes that are completely about demons, literally about demons. It was just a spiritual attack in every area. On me, on her, her dad, the whole situation. We all had our own spiritual attacks, and on top of that, we have a spiritual attack together. The very first, very obvious attack was actually at my job while I was going through headset training. I was trying to record my voice on my headset so it could recognize the numbers I was saying as I was fulfilling orders. And as I was going through all the numbers, it got stuck on 666. And it made me repeat it probably over 10 times. And I finally just gave up and told my manager that it was not letting me get past 666. And she was pretty freaked out about that. But I could recognize that it was just something to intimidate me at the time. There was one night in particular where I was trying to fall asleep because I had to get up at 2 o'clock in the morning to go to work. And I heard this noise. It was like, wow. That's like the best way I can make this noise with my mouth. It was very sci-fi sounding. And I was half asleep already. I was so tired. And I just kind of was like, oh, what is that? I don't know. I just tried to go to sleep because I knew I needed to get up in the morning and I was so tired. I was laying there on my stomach and I could feel myself leaving my body out of my back. And I have no way to describe what that feels like. It's not something I've never ever felt before. But I instantly was just like shook myself awake out of that. It was so scary. The light was flickering. I was just like, okay. I turned off the lamp and I turned on the flashlight on my phone and I decided to put on scripture to listen to. And my service kept cutting out now. I can't even listen to the scripture. It's loading. So I just decided to just pray, give up, and go to sleep. Then I have a dream where I'm driving in a car and it's pitch black and all I can see is what the headlights are hitting. But then it just gets darker and darker to the point where there's no headlights and all I can see is a steering wheel. And the car just starts violently shaking. My whole body's just shaking around. And I'm screaming and I'm scared and I'm just trying to regain control of the car. And then I instantly just wake up out of nowhere. And the first thing I hear playing on my phone was, "Do not fear, you are worth more than many sparrows." Matthew 10:31. My phone started playing that again when I woke up. So that's just one instance. Another thing that happened while I was there was me and my mom would sleep in the same bed. There was only one bed. And one night we were both about to fall asleep and I heard a woman's voice say, just like that. And I turned to her and I said, "Was that you?" And she said, "No, I thought that was you." So we both heard it and we both thought it was each other. And then a couple months later, when my daughter was visiting, she was back there in that room laying in the bed. And she came to tell me, she said, "Mom, I heard this voice," and it said, So she was hearing the same thing, and I literally have goosebumps from that. In February, I had this dream. At this point, it was still snowy outside, but I had this dream where I got out of this vehicle that was completely packed full of stuff, and it had my mom's dog and my mom's cat in there. And I walked out. I walked up to a sidewalk and I see these plants that were sprouting out of the ground. And I thought, oh, that's pretty. That represented springtime. My daughter's dad's boyfriend came up to me and he said, "Hey, we can't find so-and-so. There's an investigation. Will you help me find him?" And I said, "Yeah, I'll help you." And then I walked inside the house and there was just a bunch of older people in like suits and they were just giving me stuff. I'm like, okay, I don't get this dream either. Weird. My second really weird dream that pertained to her dad during this time frame from November to February. Here comes May. It's the end of the school year. There's only 4 days of school left, and it is a Thursday. It's my time with my daughter, so she's with me. She's with me until Sunday. That Friday, it's cold, it's rainy, it's supposed to be field day. My daughter doesn't want to play sports. She does want to be out in the cold rain, playing a bunch of games with kids that she doesn't even really like. And she's asking me, "Mom, can I just stay home from school?" And I'm thinking, oh, it's just field day, why not? I'm like, well, you better ask your dad because he's gonna cause a big fuss if you stay home from school without his permission. So she texts him and he says, "No, you have to go to school." Friday morning, it's 6 o'clock in the morning and we're getting her ready for school and I'm getting ready to drive her there. Once again, she says, "Mom, I really don't want to go to school." And I said, "Well, you're going to have to call your dad and ask him." So she calls him and he doesn't answer. And I tell her, "You know what? It's just a field day. There's only a few days of school left. It's not going to count against you. It's raining. It's cold. Let's just stay home." So she stays home and we just have a great day. And we don't hear back from her dad all day. And we think nothing of it. Like, we literally didn't even think about, oh, he hasn't contacted us. And then, towards the end of the day, I'm like, oh, it's kind of weird, I'm surprised he is not cursing me out and causing a big ruckus over this. But then I'm going to the bathroom and I see his mom is trying to call me. And I think, oh, she's probably trying to call Amira and Amira's not answering her phone. Let me go tell Amira to call her grandma. But before I can even leave the bathroom, her grandma texts me and she says, Micah, you need to call me, it's important. And I'm thinking, she wants to talk to me? This is the lady that always blocks me and ignores me when I try to talk to my daughter. She wants to talk to me. This is the lady who I showed up to her house with the police to get my daughter, and she closed the door and the police could do nothing about it, even though she's my daughter. And now she wants to talk to me. About what? It's just another part of the story. In that situation, her dad had called me drunk again, and I was already in his town because I had just met up with my lawyer. And he was just calling me and talking trash again while he was drunk. And I asked to talk to my daughter, and he said she didn't want to talk to me, which I didn't believe. So I called the police to do a wellness check. Me and my mom decided we would just go park outside his house to see what happens out of nosiness, to see if she was actually there and he was lying to me. And my dumb butt, I drove off the road into a ditch full of snow. Like, probably 50 feet from his house where he could see me. So we watched what happened, and then the police were leaving, and the police are coming down the road our way. And me and my mom are just sinking down into our seats, like, oh my gosh. And the officer stopped, and he said, are you guys okay? And I was like, oh yeah, we just called her insurance. We're gonna get towed out of here. And he's like, oh, are you sure you're okay? And I was like, actually, I'm that girl's mom. I'm the one who called the police for a wellness check. And I just came to see what was happening. I'm sorry. And he said, oh no, it's okay. I would have done the same thing if I were you. We're always here at these guys' house. They're always drunk and always fighting. You need to get her out of there. She's at her grandma's house. You need to go over there and pick her up. And they literally pushed us out of the ditch with their hands so we could go get my daughter. But when I got there, I called the police in that town, and they went with me. And since her grandma closed the door, they said there was nothing they could do about it. So my daughter was still stuck with them. Anyway, like I said, there's a million stories I could tell you within this time period. This whole 12-year time period, there's a million stories I could tell you. I call her grandma back, and literally the first thing she said was, so-and-so is dead. I thought she was messing with me. I thought this was another one of their weird schemes. I had no idea what she had up her sleeve, and the more she talked, I realized, yeah, she really did pass away. I asked her if she knew how, if it was something that happened between him and his boyfriend, and she said she didn't know what happened, but there would be an autopsy performed. And I was bawling my eyes out because just a few weeks before this, he was mocking me for believing in God, and he was saying God's not real, the devil's not real. And he had so many evil plans against me. And I was just crying, like, where is he now? He didn't believe there was a God. He passed away exactly 7 days before our trial setting. I didn't know how to tell her. Me and her grandma decided that I would drive to her house the next day and we would tell her together. I was expecting a terrible experience. I was expecting her to lose it, to cry, to be distraught. So I called into work that day. I don't remember what holiday weekend it was. I was supposed to be getting time and a half that day. But I called in and I went to her grandma's house with her. And she was like, what is going on? Why are you taking me to grandma's? You know, this is weird. Guys, when her grandma told her, her grandma pulled her into her chest and was like, it's okay. It's okay, baby. I know. It's okay. It's okay. And the whole time, this is my daughter's face. She's just, oh, it's okay. It's okay. It's okay. And my daughter just lifted back up and she was just like, you know, really? Really? And she just kept changing the subject. She just talked about her favorite cartoons and just acted like she didn't hear what she just heard. And then we decided it was time to leave. And when we got in the car, my daughter said, can we go get a burger and a shake? And I was just like, okay. And she's just stuffing her face. That night, she was dancing up and down the hallway with her headphones in. And I thought, this girl has not cried at all. She's dancing around. What is going on? Now that she's no longer scared of her dad, she agrees to go visit my dad and my stepmom and my brother and sister, who she was scared to visit because of her dad. And I talked to my stepmom about it, and she thinks she's just grieving in a weird way. But still to this day, she tells me that she doesn't feel sad about it, and she didn't feel sad about it, and she was actually relieved that he passed away. So now that he is gone, she starts telling me all the things that was happening to her. She was getting hit while he was drunk for the craziest things. One time, she told me that he would take his belt and smack her like this all over her body. And one time it was because she didn't hear him when he was calling for her because she was sleeping. So he came and woke her up like that. And another time was he wanted her to write a story, completely not school related, but for his own entertainment. And she got annoyed with him because she didn't want to do it. So he was hitting her with the belt like that. There's the cigarette burn on her arm. He had her drinking. He had her smoking marijuana. She was completely used to all the dysfunctional fighting and drunkenness. There were times that she had to help them to the bathroom. She had to clean the house and do their laundry. He puked on her pillow in her bed. She would tell me that he would make her give him foot massages, and she'd be so grossed out about it, but there was no soap in the house, so she washed her hands with bleach. Just story after story of things that she had to deal with that I wasn't allowed to know about, that she wasn't allowed to talk to me about. That's why we weren't allowed to video chat. That's why our conversations had to be monitored and I would get hung up on and blocked. But it really just goes to show, like, God really is patient for us to repent. But when you're just literally practicing evil and you're coming against God's people, God's grace and mercy will be cut off. It took me a lot of time to get past the crying over this situation and where he may very well be. And it was really hard after he had passed because his mom was going to have a funeral and she insisted on calling it a homecoming, and that still makes my stomach turn, calling it a homecoming, but that's what she insisted on calling it. My daughter did not want to go to the funeral. I had to beg her to go to the funeral so his mom wouldn't make it seem like I was forcing her to not go. I begged her so long to go to this funeral, and she finally gave in and went to the funeral. My dreams. I had the dream where my daughter was dropped off to me with no fight, no talking. I think that speaks for itself. His phone was left on the back of his car and fell off, and I had no contact with him. That also speaks for itself. There's no contact anymore, absolutely no contact. And it's crazy because I remember one time I was driving to work when I was up there in Missouri, and I was just bawling my eyes out on the way to work, crying to God, like, God, I just want to go home. I just want this to be over. I just want my daughter to have a normal life, Lord. If there's any way my daughter can just have a normal life again, please, God. I don't want her to have to deal with any of this dysfunction from him again. I also have to add that in that dream, he gave me a black trash bag full of her clothes. And that's exactly what his mom gave me when she gave me all of my daughter's things. The second dream, his boyfriend coming up to me and saying there's an investigation. That Friday morning that I had my daughter call to see if she could stay home from school, he was supposed to be at work, and his boss was wondering where he was, and nobody could get a hold of him. So they sent officers to go find him, and they found his body. Nobody knew where he was, nobody knew how he died. And in my dream, there was an investigation. I had other dreams pertaining to this that I'm not ready to talk about because they haven't come to pass yet. But even after he had passed, we were not allowed to leave Missouri. My lawyer had to tell the court that her dad had passed. The court needed proof that he had passed. One morning I was laying in bed, and as I was waking up, I heard an audible voice. It was a man's voice. Her grandma's gonna try to take her. And I'm like, I don't want to believe this. I don't want to believe this. These dreams, these things being said to me in my sleep, I don't want to believe this. Please don't let this be true. It was true. Yep, it was true. I then had to go to court with her grandma because her grandma was trying to make me seem like an unfit mother, trying to make it seem like I was out of her life because I wanted to be. So we went to the court again. Now his lawyer is teamed up with the grandma's lawyer to try to come against me and my lawyer. And the judge just kind of looks at them and just kind of chuckles and says, if her dad's gone, why are you trying to make her stay here? If you want to open up a grandparents' rights case, you can. But I don't see any reason to make her stay here. My lawyer told me that he suggests that I just pack up and leave immediately before they open up another case. I asked my daughter if she wanted to go see her grandma because her grandma had been begging me for visits over and over and over since her dad died, and my daughter kept rejecting it. Mind you, her dad died at the end of May. We didn't get home till July. 2 months, 2 more months of this, of being there. So I finally convinced my daughter to meet up with her grandma, and we meet at Pizza Hut. I'm recording everything again. And my mom says to her grandma, can I ask you a question? That's all she said. I still don't even know what the question was gonna be. Her grandma instantly got defensive and said, can't I just visit with my granddaughter? Why can't I just visit with my granddaughter? I couldn't help it, but I was instantly just on fire. And I said, why didn't I get that kind of consideration? How come you can visit with her, but you guys blocked me from talking to her on the phone? I couldn't see her. You guys monitored our phone calls. You made her hang up on me multiple times with lame excuses like, I need to take a shower or we need to go to the store. The two main excuses. And I have her recorded admitting that she helped her son keep my daughter from me. And I kept that in case I needed it for court. And at that point, my daughter said, can we leave? I said, if you want to go, we can go. We went home that night. We packed up everything we could on my mom's little tiny Mitsubishi Mirage. Everything on the top and the inside completely stuffed with my mom's stuff, my daughter's stuff, and my mom's cat and my mom's dog. And we drove to Florida, and we've been here ever since. And that was literally the biggest battle of my life. It sounds so small when I'm just talking about it, and maybe even if you're just hearing about it in a video, but it felt like the longest battle, the hardest, most heartbreaking battle of my life. To have my daughter kept from me and have so many lies about me to try to keep her from me. And then I had literally a stack of evidence, 50 police reports, recorded phone calls, recordings from being around this person, and I didn't even get to use any of it. I was ready. I have a picture of my lawyer's big giant conference table, completely all my evidence spread out all over it. We were ready to fight, but the battle was the Lord's, literally. I didn't even get to fight. But the spiritual battle was still just beginning. When I was home for that short time in April when me and my husband got married, this was my first dream, fighting demons. In this dream, I was looking at a mirror in my house. I could see the demons in my eyes distorting my face, and I was trying to pray while looking at myself in the mirror and telling it to come out in the name of Jesus. Every time I have dreams battling demons, I can barely move my jaw. Every time I have dreams battling demons. And that was my very first demonic dream. And it scared me. It scared me. When I woke up out of my sleep, my heart was pounding, I was sweating, I was crying. And my son next to me, my son next to me, 2 years old, was growling. That just made it scarier. I have goosebumps again. Like, oh my gosh. I woke up my husband and I was crying and I was like, I need deliverance, I need deliverance. And ever since then, there's multiple times I've battled demons in my dreams. I've battled demons within myself, and I've battled a lot of demons in other people. But after I got home, after all of that, and finally had my daughter back, it was like, what now? What now? In January, I've been looking for deliverance ministry. And I found one in the town I live in Florida. And I told my husband about it. And I told him I wanted to go there. And I didn't know when I'd get to go. But one night, my husband was feeling very led to go himself. And he called them at midnight. And the pastor picked up the phone at midnight and told him, come on Friday. And my husband went, and my husband received deliverance and had demons cast out of him. Just to clarify, this is when I was still in Missouri, and we were over 1,400 miles apart. And this night, while he was there and I wasn't hearing from him, I was feeling extremely sick to my stomach all night. He broke soul ties that night, and a girl that he had not heard from for over 10 years messaged him on Facebook after he left there. And when he got home, things were falling. And that could be his own story to tell. But it was just amazing just how hard God can flip the script. A lot of deliverance broke out after I got home for me, for my mom, and the majority for my daughter. My daughter went through tons of deliverance. For the first half of the year, after we got home, my daughter was still into really dark things. She didn't want anything to do with deliverance. We would bring her deliverance and she would just try to ignore it the best she could. And there was one time where she manifested and the demon was just laughing and laughing. But she was still into all these dark things, so what could we really do? She didn't really believe in God or anything. But then in January of 2022, we decided we'd go see Isaiah Saldivar in Miami. And that night was the first night my daughter ever felt the conviction of the Holy Spirit. And she was crying and she was repenting and she was giving her life to God. As Isaiah was praying for deliverance, I turn around and my daughter is on the ground. And my daughter has a demon screaming, no, she's mine. No, 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 she's mine. Screaming. And my daughter receives deliverance and she's having demons cast out of her. This experience also correlates with another dream that I had. In September of 2021, I had a dream that me and my daughter were outside and she was sliding around on ice, which I now know represents winter. She fell down on the ground and was crying, and she was saying, I didn't know it was real. I didn't know it was real. And then for almost a whole year after that, with our local deliverance ministry, she was receiving tons of deliverance that was connected to all the trauma with her dad, trauma with me, other things that she went through that I didn't know about. And now it's like nobody can tell me that deliverance isn't real. Nobody can ever tell her that deliverance isn't real. Nobody can tell her sisters that deliverance isn't real. We've all seen it. We've all participated in it. Not just for our family, but tons of people every week. Those are other things that I have recorded that I would leave to my daughter to share if she ever wants to. But demons are very aggressive and very immature and very stubborn. And I'm just so happy that she's free now. It's very rough times and it felt like it was never ending. So this is the end of part 2 of New Age, Back to Jesus, and just how fast that was a domino effect of how things changed in my life. Astronomical changes and restoration in my life. And I hope that this was insightful for you. I hope it was encouraging for you, because I know there's other mothers who go through things like this. And I'm not saying that it's gonna happen like this for you, but just know that if you put all your faith in God, God's not gonna let you down. It may not happen in our timing, it may not happen how we want it to happen, but God has your back and God wants what's best for you and your children. I have to say that I cannot stress enough the importance of true repentance and walking in obedience to the Lord. We cannot expect God to be our magic genie. We need to truly have a heart for God. Thank you for watching. I hope you watch other things I'll talk about in the future. God bless you guys.